So Mariana Kanagisa and Brigette Patton and myself, Neil Dugan, have agreed to interview each other. So we're going to interview each other around the topic of conscious communities and forming sustainable, self-sustaining communities based on effectively an anarchic type of structure. And we should probably, just sort of explain what we mean by an anarchic structure. And that is that there is no structure, and that the self-responsibility of all of the individuals leads to a place where there is a engagement in the needs of all the group, all the community. And it's a natural response to being self-responsible. So this is the general topic that we are wanting to talk about today. And Brigette has made a really huge inroads into starting up both virtual communities and physical communities as well. And Mariana also has done this, and I've certainly been involved in the stuff sort of sitting in and behind these type of things, more the virtual rather than the real, although I do live in a small community here, which is based on what Mariana and I would consider to be a togetherment structure. So that term togetherment is how we've been viewing it, Brigette. And so look, I just try it open, and I feel strongly that if we can actually just interview one another, that we'll produce something that will be exciting and interesting and different here for people to look at.
I totally agree. I'm super excited to see what comes out in this. 'Cause every time you talk to someone else, it's always a message along with, whatever the interview is, there's a deeper message that's always coming through. And so I'm always looking for the thread at the way each person that you talk to who's kind of spearheading something like this, everybody is coming from their heart. You can feel that they're coming from their heart. They're coming from a place of collaboration and connectivity, and allowing each person to blossom into their own individual genius. And time again, I have witnessed myself people blossoming and doing, I don't like to say right or wrong, but the right thing for the collective when they are actually able to be given the biofeedback from other people within the community or within society or whoever it is that we're talking to. When we get that biofeedback, now we can come to do what we came here to do, instead of getting distracted by the world and maybe what other people's opinions or influences were. When we're connecting and collaborating from the same level of consciousness, everybody brings a unique expression, but it's all the same message, but it's all a unique expression of it. And so that's what I'm excited to see, what gets revealed today while we're talking, because there's always a nugget, there's always a surprise that always lights me up, because if I didn't keep getting these, I wouldn't keep going. I'll tell you that right now.
So, Bridget, you started off by, addressing or touching on something which is really pivotal here. And I think um, it's the issue around how the biofeedback, as you describe, I think it's a wonderful way of describing it. So how that feedback actually between the individuals who are participating in a community, how that's done in such a way that it's not manipulative, so that it doesn't actually have agendas. So I don't know, Mariana, do you want to talk about that, or Bridget, would you like to talk about that? I'm not quite sure how we do this three-way interview.
I guess we know when it's time to talk. This is what I experience in the matinees. You know when it is your time to talk. What I'm experiencing here in our togetherness is that we started from a point where the self-consciousness and the self-trust wasn't the same as it is now. So I was not so sure about my good cooking, but I was told so often that people like me to cook because they like more to eat what I cook than what they like to eat when they cook themselves. So I started to trust in my cooking abilities again. This is a very big feedback. And of course, this is not only in the cooking area, this is in many areas, but the feedback from the community is very important for healing and regaining self-trust. This is something I experienced and that I can offer as a topic to discuss.
I love that you're giving a physical, applicable example right away of that, because I think, again, just like we talked about a second ago with each individual being a unique expression, you're sharing an actual physical example where a lot of the time I'm pulling information, translating into language, but I don't always have something applicable in the moment. And so hearing people's stories and having multiple people be able to give that biofeedback, like you said, when you heard multiple people saying it, because I think for me, at least when I was a kid, a lot of the time, if my parents were the ones giving me that biofeedback, it's like, well, yeah, you're my parents. You're supposed to, encourage me and everything. But when you hear it from other people, it like has a different impact, because even as a small child, you recognize the differentiation between a parent and, somebody else in society. You already start, analyzing and structuring in your own mind the way that you see society behaving. So it already starts to cause that like separation. And then you said you started to believe in your cooking again. So it's like a full circle thing. It's like you somewhere along the line start doubting it. But then when you finally reach that biofeedback that resonates with you, you are trusting it again. So it's like it is a remembering. It's like it's there. But until the biofeedback happens in the physical, that's when it gets activated and it stays with you.
Mm-hmm. It's true. Absolutely.
So, if I think about my little community here, I live with, there's another couple live on the property, and with their 3 children. It's a blended family. And I kind of persist in a role, if you like. So one of my roles that I have is that every day I make contact with them and I say, what can I do to help you on your journey today? What can I do to contribute? And this is the fundamental starting point for my interaction in this small community here. And I remember talking to somebody about this, and they said, well, do they ask you? Do they reciprocate? And I said, well, that's not the point. The point is, this is actually, my thing. My thing is that I make that offer each day, and to trust myself in it. So, like, what you're both talking about is to actually, You know, not to forget the trust in yourself around what an intention is, or whatever it is, you know, whatever the thing is. It's interesting. So tell us a little bit about, and a bit more about your physical community there, Brigette. Tell us a bit more.
So as far as what we're doing physically that we're just getting started, I mean, we really only began to implement it in the physical like just a couple of months ago. And it's mostly, you know, we already had chickens. We really tried to have bees here, but it gets really cold in Michigan. So we kept losing our beehives. And my dad, who also lives on the property, he couldn't handle the bees dying. So we didn't end up doing bees again. So we've got the chickens who are, you know, roam freely. They're a part of our family, and we, you know, harvest the eggs. And we've also got gardens, vegetable gardens, which all of this for me is brand new. Several years ago, after I had my first, I really wanted to do this, but then I had 2 more babies, and each child that you have like takes more energy out of your body, and it just took longer each child for my body to recover. And this one, it took about 4 years, this 3rd child. And so I'm just getting back into the energy of it and finding really golden nuggets around the property that I didn't even really realize that we had. So like, you know, just raspberry bushes all around. We have 25 acres, so raspberry bushes all around, and opening this property up to several families locally to do like a community garden. And so everybody's contributing financially, physically, like coming to help with the work, the upkeep of the property, and, you know, just really the general mental, emotional, physical health and well-being of the collective community in the physical. So like coming together and having ceremony, coming together and just being, really, so that we can see what it is that we're being asked to do, because this is all brand new for us. And even though there are communities out there that are already doing, you know, sustainability and farming and all of that, we want to combine mind, body, spirit within the community setting. So it's all of the components. And, you know, that's why I was so intrigued by what you had put together with the 12 positions, which has my wheels have been turning like crazy. Like, I just want to pick your brain about that. Like, I am so intrigued by that. I can't even begin to tell you, because I know that those numbers are significant. I've been seeing those numbers for probably about 8 years now, and I didn't know the significance of them, but I can feel it. So that's what this physical community is. And what's really interesting, this is the last thing I just want to say about it. So my home property is like the mother hub of a lot of like interactions that are getting ready to like sprout out. Like, we're interconnecting with a lot of other groups locally. So we're coming up with concepts. So like, what does it look like to integrate people that are like kind of thinking in this direction with people that maybe aren't really ready to start exploring in this direction yet, because the time is now, and we really don't have any reason why we can't start doing this. It's just there's fear, doubt, or whatever going on. So we're creating the concepts and providing the support for that to reach out and connect with others. So while we were on this interview, one of the other people that are connecting, she actually called, which I haven't talked to her in a while because things have been happening. So that always is a message to me, like, oh, she's calling right now, which usually I'm the one calling her. And so that's a sign to me that what we're talking about applies to what I'm doing with her, which is another physical location that people aren't living on that property, but this is a property where it is in nature. It's where people can go and collaborate, and they can be out there with the water and the trees, and they can just see what it feels like to be, because a lot of people aren't ready to immerse themselves fully into this, just jumping in full body, like some of us have. You know, some of us just get that fire lit and we're like, here we go. And we're just like trailblazing. And other people are like, yeah, like that makes them wobbly and they get resistant. And so if it's kind of like an inviting way to start integrating into it, and then, you know, when they're ready to go deeper, we have all of the steps laid already ahead of time. So when they get to this point and they get to this point, like each touch point is what we're calling them, allows for them to accelerate through their process, because there's people at each, you know, checkpoint to, you know, connect with them and give them that biofeedback so that they can build that trust and they can have that inner security with themselves. So that's kind of the vision that's coming out of my mouth right now.
Well,
no, please go, Mary.
I just wanted to say that there are certainly several steps to letting go and being unconditional. Until you really reach the way of unconditional coexistence, there are few steps before that. And of course, everybody starts from fear.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, it's a really good point. So, you know, I'd just like to pick up on some stuff that you're talking about there before, Brigette, as well. And you know, we come from these sort of hierarchical structures. You know, this is our dominant way of operating. And so, you know, people listening to what you're saying could be hearing, you know, like the genuine energy of change and opportunity and that sort of thing. Or they could also hear that, oh, there's some rules here and there's checkpoints. And, you know, at this checkpoint, we've got a guide. We've got somebody who knows about this that can actually facilitate the person through. And, you know, again, that can be from a place, a really wholesome, loving, compassionate, understanding place of, I've seen this journey, I understand this journey. You could, you know, if you wish, you can draw upon my understanding of this in all levels of the being, whether it be spiritual or emotional or whatever, or it could be here's a bunch of rules. And it's just fascinating to me, you know, how you keep this open, how you keep everything open without there being structure and without there being rules. So what are everybody's thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, for me, you know, one thing that has really helped with letting go is, you know, the modality of the human design and the gene keys. I mean, having something that you can see physically helps you let go. Well, helps me anyway, and the people that I've been working with let go in a way that really lights them up, because they're under the impression, and they have witnessed and experienced it, that when you let go of one thing, something even better comes in. So the structure that we have is around the programming and the belief systems. And if we come across a programming that feels like it's coming from fear, we've all sort of, like the leadership within the virtual community anyway, that is like really spearheading this, we all can feel when the resonance is shifting. Everybody knows when there's a belief system or language that's being used that's no longer of a high frequency, or there's something attached there. And so when there's an attachment, it's like, oh, this is what I like to call, like, it's a wormhole. It's almost like a portal going back in time. You feel that density, and you go into it through conversation or through acting it out. I mean, sometimes we create worksheets or something from it. And by doing that with each thread that we feel, it just always keeps it open. And it lets you, it like gives you that permission to let go, because you're not leaning on your own understanding. You're allowing, you know, the full reign of consciousness to come in and do the work for us, instead of us as humans in our limited understanding to try to be like recreating the wheel. And so, like, one of my absolute favorite, and I laugh with delight, at least on a daily basis. I have everything I need before I realize I need it. Now, I created this program to run in my reality because I wanted to, I like to test the limits of reality. I want to know what's true. I want to know what we can do here. And so I found when I get precise, when I'm in precision and I'm listening to that inner authority, it's true. I'll leave something in the most random place and there it is. Or, you know, I ran out of toilet paper and somebody dropped it off at my doorstep, you know, because they overheard a conversation my dad was having about it. It's like, it just, when you surrender in that way and then you have the physical evidence and you give it a chance to reveal itself to you, it builds that certainty, it builds that trust, because now each time that it happens, you believe it more. Like it's happening in the physical, so it must be true up here, right? You can believe it. And so within this community, the more people that are providing that biofeedback at that level, the easier it is for people to let go of that illusion of control that they think they have to make it work. You know, it's like, no, that's the fastest way to slow everything down.
Yes, one thing that I would be interested in is how many people live on your property and how far grown is your community already?
We're under lockdown right now up here in Michigan. We're actually just starting to open back up. So there's two things happening. Like there's about 15 to 20, including kids right now, but that dynamic is shifting because the people that are participating in the garden, which is really interesting with your sustainability and your profit piece, like that's why I'm really interested in that, because I'm starting to piece together how this is happening. So there's like the people that are doing the gardening and they want to be, you know, they want to contribute in this way, but maybe they're not into the spiritual end of stuff yet and they don't want to be in leadership necessarily. So there's kind of like two containers coming together. There's the leadership container, and you know, there's about 75 people virtually on that, but there's about 25 people locally. So they'll come and collaborate here on the property, but maybe they're not a part of the vegetable and, you know, fruit and that kind of thing. However, I do believe it's going to somehow come together in the future, in the near future, like as everything's starting to open back up. And I think it was kind of giving me time to understand the way this flow is going to be going, and maybe even to meet you guys and to like pick your brains on things, because I want to make sure that I'm serving in the highest way possible, which that is always assigned to me if like things haven't started flowing yet, that I need more pieces of the puzzle. So I'm not like rushing into it. When they show up, I have enough wisdom. If they aren't showing up, I'm in a holding pattern, collecting data and whatnot. So the long answer to your question is there's about 10 people that come and go, but don't necessarily live on the property. So I don't know, I'm not opposed to people living on the property, and I'm open to it, but I also want to make sure that the land is getting what the land is desiring. And so I don't know if it's meant to be all agriculture and vegetables, and then there's another plot just down the road that will be like the residential tiny houses and whatnot. I don't know. These are just pieces that have just been swirling around this week. It's unfolding very rapidly though.
And what is your wish? Is your wish a community to live in or a community to work with?
I don't know what my human wish is, because there's a lot of, and I'll just be honest, like I know that there's a lot of fear in my body still around, you know, collaborating with people just because of things that have happened to me in the past when I've really opened my heart and opened my land and my property up. I've always had people living with us. Like since I was a child, we've always had our doors open. So right now I'm in a stage where I haven't fully opened this space up for people to like live here in this way, because I just want to make sure that everybody is respecting boundaries and, you know, honoring each person's individual integrity. And, you know, so I like to observe for quite some time before, you know, I want to make sure whatever energy and emotions coming up that, you know, the person is reliable and accountable and respectful. And I'm totally open, and I trust 100% when spirit brings me someone. So one of the ways that I know if somebody is able to be a part of this mentally, because really that's usually what it is if they can show up on my physical property. Because if they can't, if something keeps coming up and they can't show up, I know that that's a way that spirit's helping me out. And I'm not going to keep trying to make that work, because I've found out what happens down that thread. So I'll just hold the vision and allow for it to be shown to me. That's just kind of how I work. And that's why I'm looking for the biofeedback of people like you who are already doing it, so my body can relax and my nervous system can relax, and I can attract those similar dynamics here, if that's what is meant to be happening.
Okay, I can tell you my story if you want to.
I would love to hear either one of you guys, any feedback on this. I want to hear it.
So the people I'm living with here in this little togetherment, and the animals I'm living with, they all selected me.
Yes.
Cat by cat came and asked whether it is allowed to live with me and live in the house.
How many people are in your little community?
We have 10 cats who live in the house and outside the house, 2 cats who live outside the house, and I'm living in the house, and Sandra and Eike mostly living in their car and sometimes in the house, just as they please.
Beautiful.
And I met them when I went to Austria to see my parents, and they came here to be a cat sitter. And they cared for the cats, and they fell in love with the cats, and the cats fell in love with them. That was in January, and they never left. And we just started to live together and work together, and we were extremely astonished about the dynamics that started to happen. We had a few crashes that were quite severe and serious, but we always managed to communicate, to see our filters, to go back to a point of trust. And as I said, and you mentioned before, there's a long, long way from fear to unconditional coexistence. But now, the point we reached now is that I go to the kitchen and Eike knows that I like somebody to make a coffee for me. And he just gets up and makes me a coffee. And I know that Sandra sometimes in the afternoon likes to eat a salad. So when I look at her eyes, just take a glance, I know this is the time for the salad. And I'm doing a salad for her. And now she's shopping so that we have everything we need, so that we can care for each other. And she knows that I just don't like to go shopping.
I'm right there with you, sister. That actually caused an emotional release in my body. And what I heard was that that is what I want. Like I know that's actually what I'm craving. That's always what I've wanted. It's just that because I had been, giving to people that weren't really actually capable of this level, that's where the experience and whatever happened came in. And what you're telling me is the biofeedback that I needed, and why I had an emotional release. And I even I teared up, because that is what I want. And that's what I've experienced like outside of this, like when I go camping or whatever, you know, like I took my kids camping last year by myself, just the two little ones, and the people in the campground, just everybody came and helped, you know, like they just came to our campsite, like people we didn't even know, like giving us wood and helping us get our fire started. And just, it was going and getting ice for us so that I didn't have to leave because I was there by myself. And it's just, you know, that's my vision. That's what I really am craving in my soul. And I just, you know, hearing that from you, and hearing Neil telling his story about how he gets up in the morning, does that. It's like, that's what I want. That's what I crave. And so I feel that this is a sign for me to just open my heart up and trust the people showing up right now. Every emotion that we've gone through, they've already have demonstrated that we can go through that, and that they have demonstrated that they will give unconditional love going through the process, and that I can trust it. It's just such an old wound, you know, like to allow it to happen in the physical is very emotional.
It is, definitely. And I've been crying a lot of silent tears the last month. Because things happened that I never trusted in.
Neil, you feel, to me in my body, it feels like you have something that's resonating and some wisdom to share in this. You always do such a nice job putting what we're talking about into English.
One of the things that I'm observing, you're both talking about, and I guess I must be talking about it as well, is that it entails confrontation. But the confrontation that's actually required is a confrontation of love and compassion and understanding. And so, you know, there could have been lumpy experiences going on here in the community, which there are. Like, there's plenty of lumpy experiences. But if I myself am able to actually confront, so I just face up and say, you know, what can I do to help? How can I contribute? And, you know, you mentioned earlier there, Brigette, about, you know, it sort of being a spiritual community as well as an emotional community and a physical community and that type of thing, and a community to help look after the kids and do all of that kind of stuff. And if you're able to actually confront at all of those levels and in all those ways, then there's some real opportunity that actually comes out of it, and it's real tough. So Marianne and I just were speaking moments ago, you know, about some issues in our team. So like the, you know, our virtual community, which is running the, you know, the project, this summit. It started off as a summit, and now it's turning into, you know, something a lot more diverse and a lot more interesting, with a lot of tensions. So how do we go about actually addressing those tensions? How do we actually manage to confront in such a way that we actually, you know, there's some kindness in it, and compassion and understanding, and that it can actually lead to a place where, you know, there's some real transformation come out of it. Now, I'm no different to anybody else. So, like, I'm not the guru here, not at all. And it's you know, for me as well. So, like, how can things be presented to me in such a way that I can go, yeah, hang on a minute, I actually need to grow in this area. You know, like, this is some stuff I need to actually grow and do some work with. How can that be done? And if we are looking at this notion of each individual is responsible, and in so doing, they then think, well, crikey, what is it that I'm doing for the community here? How am I actually interacting with Brigette or with Mariana? How do I do that? Like, how can I, you know, be there to support that confrontation within another person? So how can I support Brigette actually have a confrontation about stuff that she needs to be confronting? How can I support that? And Mary and I do that with each other all the time. So and there's no domination, there's no intention to manipulate, there's there's certainly an intention to help the other person wake up. Certainly, that's a strong intention. It's a really strong intention. And it's not done for the purpose of gaining power or dominance. So part of that, I'll talk a little bit about the 12 roles. 12 roles are based on a Gnostic set of principles where there are 12 chief features. And so the notion is that you have all of these chief features, mainly all shadow. So there's only one, sort of non-shadow aspect of these chief features. And that's the beginning of it, is to actually recognize that the nature of the humans can actually be represented. And if we're sitting around a table and we've got 12 people around the table, there's an opportunity for everybody to actually represent this sort of needling nature of all these shadows. Here's a way of doing it. And if it's done in a conscious way, so that here is a gift that we can all bring, to the table. We're each bringing a component of this gift. And out of that, we're all learning, because we're all sitting at the driver's seat around that round table. Each seat actually is the driver's seat, and everybody takes every role, because it's it depends who they're relating to, what they're going to be doing. So we talk about, dominance and power manipulation and these types of things. Well, dominance and power are two of the seats at the table. So selfishness and greed and fear, they're all seats at the table. What is it that we can do to actually allow another person who's sitting at the table to actually be able to confront these aspects of themselves? So this would be the personal development role of the table in the community. So when you're talking about you're wanting your community to be operating at the spiritual level and all these mind levels and all that kind of stuff, that all sits in there as a component of it. And I'm only talking about a titchy tiny little piece of this puzzle, but it feels like this is important to actually realize that the people who are coming to the table are not perfect.
Yes, and obviously we can hear that when you say you want spiritual people around yourself. I can hear the fear of being hurt by non-spiritual people. Yep. So it's a lot of fear of being hurt in there. Just being injured once again and once again and once and again. Just as you said, you had an open heart, but time by time, brick by brick, it wasn't covered.
Yeah, and it's like I have had years and years of evidence in the other direction. And I still have that, because I can feel how big this is. And I haven't gone through the physical experience of actualizing this vision yet at this grand scale. I have done in the past, not at this level of consciousness, and the outcome was painful. And so now, as I'm peeling back the layers, or as one of my colleagues likes to say, formulating the layers on the outside of the pearl, right? Mm-hmm. So as the pearl is being created, the essence and the luminescence, all of those pieces are happening, and it's time to actualize and go through with the entire process, because I had this before, but not at this level of consciousness. And because that was the outcome before, and I had a lot of wisdom to gain in the years since then, it's been about, I think, 15 years. Yeah, it's been 15 years since I've done anything at this grand of scale with this many people physically, where I was in charge. You know what I mean? Like, I'm running the vision. I'm like the engine behind this. And the last time it was at this scale, the repercussions, fell apart. And just talking about this with you guys helps me see that it is safe for me to move forward, especially with the people that have been around me for years. And I'm like, I'm not ready yet. It's like they've already gone through all the emotions and all of the tests that we, you know, place on people to make sure that they're safe. It's like, what else do I need? You know, you guys are helping me see that this is totally possible. And I mean, you guys are doing it, and you guys are at this level of awareness, and everybody has demonstrated that they're capable of being mature enough to navigate whatever emotion comes up for us to explore and see without projecting anything on each other. And so what I'm hearing also, anybody that's listening to this replay, that when they're looking to build something like this, these are things to watch out for. And these are also checkpoints within themselves to see if these people that they're drawing in and attracting, if they're the ones that are the ones to start doing this with, like watching the behavior and watching the reaction of these things. It's a good way for you to kind of comfort yourself and create that self-comfort to convince yourself that it's safe to keep moving forward with these next steps.
Brigette, the secret is that it's going to hurt. You just can know that it's going to hurt, but it won't hurt your eternal, everlasting, always loving soul. It only will hurt your ego, and that's good because the ego needs to go anyway.
For me, I'm not afraid of it hurting. Like, I have no problem. It every day hurts in some way when we're letting go, right? But it's like, I don't want to put a bunch of energy into something and people that aren't going to keep the torch burning. Like, I am done putting energy into areas that the energy is a black hole, because I want to make sure that the energy is getting reciprocated. Like, if I'm pouring love and light and energy and all of this into somebody, I want to make sure that it's not somebody that's just lining up at the table to take off. I want it to be somebody that is going to give back too.
I see that Neil wants something to say, so I'll wait till he...
Yeah, go for it, Neil.
Well, look, you know, we're talking about, you know, huge principles here. Like, these are enormous principles, and Mariana and I have talked about this on many occasions. And, you know, there's the famous story around, you know, letting the dead bury the dead, and to not be attached to people who are not, you know, part of your journey. And Mariana used to quote to me the story of Arjuna, and he's standing on one hill. Maybe you could tell the story, but, you know, what he's told, what Arjuna's told, Marianne.
Yeah, Arjuna was standing on the battlefield, and he saw that the people he should attack are his family. And Arjuna, the big victorious man, called upon Krishna and said, I'm not going to shoot my relatives. I'm not going to shoot my family. What are you thinking? And he threw his bow on the ground. And Krishna actually said to him, Arjuna, don't you know the dead are dead already?
So these are huge principles. What you're actually talking about there is, you know, like how Brigette is talking about it. She's saying, I'm not going to invest my energy down a blind track. And the blind track actually, you know, has people who are not wanting to wake up. And, you know, when I, you know, the experience that I've been having, well, for donkey's years really, but just very, very strongly recently, around this duality and the victim-bully duality, and whether, you know, the pressure that's come on is, you know, are you going to stay in here? It's going to get worse. It's going to get tougher and tougher and tougher if you're going to stay in that duality, or are you going to wake up? Are you going to jump out of it into a place of self-responsibility and growth? And but fundamentally, it's about waking up. So are you going to choose to do that? And your languaging is probably not as threatening as the languaging of the Bhagavad Gita when, you know, Arjuna is talking to Krishna, because, man, that is super tough.
Yeah.
Do you see that they're already dead? That notion of I'm tingling, man, as I'm talking about this. But the power of recognition that it's pointless to go down that track. It's absolutely pointless to go down that track. And it rips me apart. Like that aspect of myself that still wants to hold on to the fact that, but they're my family. All humans are my family. I have to care for them. I have to, you know, like that there's such a strong inclination in there. And to actually be able to just say, look, I can see that they are already dead. Where does that take you in terms of being the one who's going to judge another person? How does that relate to being non-judgmental? Like these are huge things, and yet it's what's coming up for you, Brigette. It's really powerfully there, and I can definitely reassure you that we've been asking this question ourselves over and over and over again, and we just have to look at it. Community has to be a community of people who intend to wake up. That's the criteria. Is that there's an intention to wake up.
Really the only criteria. You know, it's like, and everything else just happens, you know, like everything else just happens. If your intention and you verbalize that is your intention, it just like you have actually cast a spell on yourself. Like you will be held accountable for what you just committed to one way or another. And then from that point forward, it's really just about facilitating the energy, and it's just about facilitating the experience in a way that you have described, in a compassionate way, in an unconditional, loving way. Because once you've dropped the mind's defenses by them making the verbal commitment themselves, all you have to do now is just really relax and lean into it, because spirit will provide one way or another. And it doesn't even have to be through the person that was facilitating it in the first place. It'll show up somewhere in the experience to draw it out of the person. And so like I've really played with a lot of these concepts in my reality as far as my relationships go. I've stretched the boundaries of each relationship. And now spirit's like, okay, it's time to come together in the physical. And I'm like, okay, you know, it's worked so far with all these other circumstances, but what's it going to be like to be around people day in and day out? Like, what's that going to look like? And so I genuinely appreciate you reminding me that the concept is my intention is to awaken, and I can always fall back on that and go back in my mind, is this person's intention to awaken? And yes, because then right after that, all of the evidence will be shown to me and reminded all of the opportunities that has happened. And so then that gives me the courage to move forward with this next step, whatever it is, every time.
So it's an intuitive sense for you. And you know, for you, it's a spiritual intuitive sense. Sorry, I know you were about to say something there, Mariana. But
Oh, I just wanted to say that disappointments will happen. There will be requests that you have on people, and they will just float in. And those requests might be disappointed, and you might see what people see as their truth today is not their truth tomorrow. And there will be a lot of floating experience, and you need to be flexible. But again, it comes back to trust.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because especially again for people that are listening, I forget about, you know, the steps to a certain realization. And another foundational like piece to our community is, and I even say, I'm like, feel into your body, because this is just the level of consciousness that we're able to translate right now. Like, so for example, I'm saying this to the best of my ability in this moment, but in 5, 10, 15 minutes down the road, we may have another piece of information that comes in, and now that changes everything. And so the entire community is very acclimated to that type of behavior, because that's how I created this container, which was on complete flexibility and always the inner authority of self and never relying on what somebody else is telling you you should be doing or need to be doing. It's always an invitation to feel into your body what you want to participate in until the thread runs out. And I always will tie back to everybody, like the initiation, when you felt the thread, like if it fizzles out, you may have already done everything that you needed to just by like initiating, by like inviting somebody to do something with you, for example. Maybe that was the end of what we needed to accomplish together. It wasn't that we actually needed to come together that day. It was just knowing that the hand is extended. And then the next time that thread pops up and that impulse happens, now maybe it's going to take us a little further, and now maybe we're going to connect in the physical. So each time somebody ebbs and flows out of a role or a position, there's never any judgment to who's taking on a part of the project and who's not. So for example, we have our school that we're formulating right now. People are contributing content, people are doing group Zoom calls, people are doing one-on-one coaching. However, the people doing one-on-one coaching, they might do it this week, and maybe next week they want to be a visionary. And that's fine, because as long as they're doing what they want to do and they're following their thread, everything's getting done, everything's getting accomplished. So there's never any lag, or like the torch just always continues to be carried because of this way of being and not having an expectation. You know, like there isn't a, oh, you better finish this project. It's like work on it when you feel led to and contribute your essence. And maybe all of your essence was to create that worksheet. And maybe now you're done and Spirit's pulling you in another direction. And we have to allow that to happen organically, especially right now, because it's so new and fresh to be able to live like this. And I want to be able to give everybody that ability. So like the only structure of the container is follow that prompt and let it be what it is, but don't make it what it isn't. Like let go of it once it's done. Let it die once it wants to go to bed. You know, like don't keep trying to make it work. You know, someone, and every single time somebody else comes in and just shows up, as long as we're all talking, communicating, and saying, you know what, I'm done with this now. Someone just shows up and there's never an overlap. It's just so crazy to me. It's mind-blowing, really. But it's proof it works.
Yes, and the key is communication. It's the absolute key. We here in our community, we sit down every noon without mobile, without computer, without anything. And we just take at least half an hour to talk and see whether everything is okay and everybody's needs are covered. Mm. Or that we talk about problems once they are there. Mm-hmm. And we didn't do that for a time. And we're back to it now because when things get complicated, it is very, very important to be in communication. And seeing that, we did go back to what they do in Tamara. Take each day time for talking. And I guess it's the crucial part of building up a community. Really take time, at least half an hour, for everybody to sit on the table and talk. And have a voice, at least for a few minutes.
It's a really interesting point that you're making there, Brigette, where you're, you know, that there's an allowance within the expectation of awakening. So like if we've got this joint expectation of, or intention of awakening, not expectation, intention of awakening. And sitting in there is that you're, you know, the way you're working is that people will be led by their intuitive self, which can be from spirit or however you're describing these things. And I know my own work is around coherence, And coherence is for me, like, this is my understanding of it, is that it's a 7-step process to get there. And it begins by contact. And so if you're talking about your community there, it's everybody's in contact with each other, or are they? Are they actually managing to maintain contact? So what I notice with groups, working with groups of people, but also within an individual, is that the parts just aren't talking. And well, they're not only are they not talking, they're not actually able to remain in contact because it's too hot. It's too challenging, too tricky. And so the contact, the very, very first step in that process to end up being coherent, is not being achieved. If you can actually hold contact, and Maria and I worked with this a long, long time, with these sort of 5 brain models and all the minds associated with all that kind of thing that we're talking a little bit about. And what we would observe is that an aspect of the individual human, one of their minds just would not stay in contact with the others because they can't trust them. Untrustworthy, too crazy, too difficult. And so they force a dropping of the contact. And so what can we do? What can we do about this? We can't possibly get to a coherent state where we're really cooperating, collaborating, where there's total communication going on, because we can't even make contact. So what we
just
do
want
there.
to give Brigette an example. Yeah. Usually the instinct doesn't trust the intellect, and vice versa.
Yeah. So the mind of the gut will not trust the intellect. Interestingly, the mind of the pelvis, which would be the sex center, nearly always won't trust the heart, because look where you took us in the past. It's probably got into in the past, and so it will get in the way, and it will just actually sever the connections. So we're talking about like a community, which is the individual person, and then on top of all of this, you've got spirit. So you've got all these spiritual components, involved in there as well. And what I'm hearing you doing is that you're saying reference back all the time to spirit. So spirit. So what are we getting from spirit? And are these steps that we're taking, are they assisting us to be in contact, connecting and communicating and cooperating and collaborating, and somewhere down the track becoming coherent? Is that what's going on? Spirit will tell you. So that intuitive spiritual way that you're actually referring to it, you'll get that information, all right? You will get it.
Yeah, because we're getting the biofeedback from people, but we're also getting biofeedback from Mother Earth and through spirit. And so within our community, those are like the pillars of the training, if that's what you want to call it, that we go through in really training our mind to interpret and understand what the body is picking up on in terms of the environment, because we too, have the different brains that we work from within the body, the heart and the gut and the sacral energy, and all of these different pieces that drive and are the motors of movement within our creation. And so being able to bypass what the brain is saying and start detaching from the program that is running based off of the feedback that you're getting. Now you can reprogram the interpretation of the feedback, and you can level up and transcend your understanding of it. So now when I'm getting this emotion, this information from out here, and I'm feeling it and I'm interpreting it with this, now I can decide based off of what outcome I get when I interpret it this way, if that's the highest purpose. Because if my belief system is, I'm feeling this way because that person hurt my feelings and, they're thinking X, Y, Z. It's like, well, that's not really serving. Like, how is that serving me by thinking that way? What else could it mean? What's another way to think of this? What's a way that would empower me and fill me with energy to be able to make, this interpretation, a way for me to understand what what it is that my brain can't really comprehend yet from my limited understanding. And when you're not fighting with yourself and you're not trying to force it to be a certain way, now there's someone or something that is revealed to you that will reprogram that thinking. And so we're all doing this in the community in different various ways with each other through various modalities, teaching, whatever. And all of that's great. But the truth is, once you've embodied it, energy transference happens anyway. It happens. The subconscious mind is going to pull in those pieces and do the work anyway. Even if I'm not there, even if you're not there, we've already made that contact. And so if you can anchor in and you can use whatever breadcrumb it is to assist in the planting of the seed, now this person comes up, or now you have that way of like understanding that this person is, needing to connect with you, for example. It's like, I can feel this person needs me right now, like, or they'll do it to me. And we have formed a way of telepathy, I guess, if you want to call it. So we're always knowing when it's time, like, and we're always getting that same message. It's fluid. It's the hive mind mentality that you were talking about. It's the same way dolphins communicate. It's the same way whales can send sonar across the entire globe and communicate with each other. We can do it too. And so this is exactly what's happening. And our species is evolving into this form of, living and being together on the planet, where a lot of the other species have already gotten there, and we're just kind of figuring it out.
Yes, this is why the ego and the brain is always in the way.
Yep. And this is a way to get around it. Well, I don't know what else do you guys want to dive into. I'm feeling like we really covered a lot of ground. I know we didn't talk about exactly what we planned on, but we also knew that a lot would come in when we were talking.
Yes, I guess the main thing that it all comes down to trust, and to a point of self-discovery and a great adventure if you try to live in a community. This is the ground we covered, and this is what it is all about. It's a long journey from fear to trust, and a great big adventure.
My summary would be that it's a big step up to actually work in a community. So it's so easy to actually hide from yourself, and it's far more difficult to hide from yourself when you're actually in a community. If you're consciously trying to do it in the way that you are, Brigette and Marianne, obviously as well. So that's what I've been hearing over and over and over again here. It's a big step. It's a big step up.
How many people?
Yeah, so look, thank you both for this coherent experience. Thank you.
Yes, it's been a pleasure. I've genuinely enjoyed it, and it's given me a lot of, I feel like it's given me a lot of momentum to keep moving forward in this. So I'll be excited to stay in contact with you guys as this unfolds and just see what happens. I can only imagine.
Lovely. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Bye, Brigette.
Bye.